Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. Welcome to the Regional Working Group meeting on Sub-Saharan Africa for the Local Public Sector Alliance. This Regional Working Group is chaired by myself. My name is Kah Walla, and I'm from Cameroon. And I believe that my co-chairs, we are 3 co-chairs for this working group, are connected. So let me give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. Yeah, I definitely saw you here. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, Kah. Good day, everyone. My name is Jaap de Visser, and I'm also one of the proud co-hosts or co-conveners of this working group under the leadership of LPSA. And I am the National Research Chair for Multi-Level Government at the University of the Western Cape in Cape Town, and I'm attached to the Dalla Omar Institute. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and connect with the colleagues here. Thanks, Kah.
Thanks, Jaap. Welcome. And I think Judy is not yet with us. Judy Oduma is from Kenya and has a very strong background in decentralization. And I'm sure she will be joining shortly. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Kah Walla. I run a consulting firm based out of Cameroon called Strategies. We work on various aspects of local governance as one of our key focus areas. So we are at, I would say, a little bit over the 1-year point since we kicked things off last year. And we have been able to hold 4 our quarterly meetings throughout 2023. We are looking forward to what we would like to do for the rest of 2024, and wanting also to find out what is the situation in decentralization across our continent. So a lot of things are happening on our continent in terms of governance as a whole. A lot of this is impacting local governance. So we thought we would start this meeting out with an update on what is happening at the country level. So our agenda looks like this. We're right in the middle of the introduction. And I will give Jamie a minute, in just a minute after I finish with the agenda, if he wants to give us any updates from LPSA. After that, we will be asking all the participants to give us an update on decentralization based on the country or countries that they are working on, just so that we have a broad idea on what is happening on the continent. And after that, we are going to be brainstorming on themes, issues, strategies, ways that we want to work going forward in 2024 before we close out the meeting. So let me take a minute now and check in with Jamie to know if there are any key elements, updates, announcements that he would like to share.
Thanks so much, Kah. Nothing from my end. other than to welcome everyone here. I'm attending today just as a member, and I'm, as my good friend Roy Kelly says, God gave us one mouth but two ears. So I'm going to be listening today. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Jamie. And I know it's still a little early in the morning for you. So thank you for for taking the time out and being able to join us. So with that, then we are going to go to our country updates, our regional updates. And we do have a good number of people online. So we're asking you to keep these updates as short and sweet as possible. Really give us the meat, the key elements of what is happening in your country or region. We are always, of course, looking at decentralization in the classic setup of it, what's happening at the political level, what's happening at the administrative level, and what is happening at the fiscal level, as well as what is happening with citizen and community participation. So I did give my co-chairs a heads up. So while the rest of you just sort of put your ideas together, I think I will start off with Jaap. He's also from, one of the biggest countries and definitely the biggest economies on the continent. Jaap, I have been reading some interesting things about what's happening in South Africa, but I'm very curious to hear from you on updates from South Africa. What's happening?
Thanks, Kah. I'm really curious to hear what you have read. I'm always fascinated by what is said about our country elsewhere on the continent. That always gives us a very good and sometimes humbling perspective on where we are at. So please tell me more. But I did note down a few points that I wanted to just share with the colleagues. I may not tick all the boxes of political, administrative, fiscal, and community participation, but certainly number 1, 2, and 4, I think. The first one, the big debate in local government circles at the moment in South Africa is about the impact of coalitions. When your electoral framework or your electoral system does not produce an outright majority for one political party, how do you work together? And it puts enormous pressures on municipalities to cope with that. Our political parties are not yet very good at forming coalitions, at forming stable coalitions. So the national government is scrambling to see how to regulate this and how to make coalitions more stable, because particularly in some of our biggest cities, unstable coalitions have been quite devastating for service delivery. So that's certainly something to follow and maybe of interest to other countries on the continent that also have electoral systems that do not necessarily produce an outright majority in local councils. Then there's an interesting, very important debate about the decentralization of commuter rail, a hugely important function in our biggest cities. And some of our cities have been asserting that they want to take control over the trains in the cities, which are not, at the moment run by national government. And a bill has been suggested that seems to devolve some responsibility to cities on commuter rail. So that's certainly something to watch in the future, because as I'm sure, as you all know, with devolution, it's usually a case of the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh, and we're not quite sure how much will be devolved to cities that can handle commuter rail, because we are of the view that cities need to have greater control over public transport within their areas of jurisdiction. There's also on the political front, on the politics front, there's an interesting debate in South Africa about legislation that has been passed to make it prohibited for politicians to also be officials. So when you are active in your political party as a treasurer or as a chairperson or as a secretary or some sort of office bearer position in a political party, that you then may not be a municipal official. So I also think that may have some resonance elsewhere on the continent, wherever you struggle with the the blurring of the distinction between when is a politician and when does he or she behave like an official, and vice versa. So we are trying to deal with that in our legal framework, which is also something to perhaps take note of. And then we've got on the community engagement front also very I think important and complicated developments where a municipality or a local government actually fails dismally in providing services that at some point exasperated communities organize themselves and take over municipal assets and start running municipal services for themselves. So it's sort of a do-it-yourself kind of approach, which on the one hand is a testimony to community engagement and active citizenry, but on the other hand, it also confuses local government tremendously, particularly when that is sanctioned by the courts, where, for example, a while ago, a community organization essentially took over the solid waste disposal services by a municipality, and the court sanctioned it because the municipality was simply not able to run it effectively. So what do we do with that? Do we condemn that as an encroachment on the integrity of a municipality and local democracy, or do we encourage it as citizen engagement and citizen responsibility? There's lots more to say, but maybe I can end off with the note that on the 29th of May, we have our national and provincial elections coming up, not our local elections. Our local elections are on another date, which I think is good for our local democracy. But these national provincial elections are, of course, a hot topic. Everyone is watching that with bated breath. We've got former President Jacob Zuma as the comeback kid because he's launched another party and he's on his way back. So lots of politicking, but this will also have an effect on local government because our national and provincial governments play a tremendously important role in local government in terms of supervision and interacting with local governments, funding them. So whatever is going to happen on the 29th of May will have a major impact on local government. And it would be interesting to follow that from wherever you are. Thanks, Kah. Back to you.
Thank you, Jaap. You see, I was right. A lot of interesting and exciting things going on in South Africa in terms of the conversations. I think it's interesting. Definitely, I know several African countries are confronted with political coalitions when you have several political parties present in a municipal council or in a regional council. Interesting that something transportation like commuter rail is getting devolved to the local level. And should politicians be officials? I think that question is again all across the continent, and communities taking over because of the failure, basically, of municipalities. What do we do with that? I'm noting down the points for everybody as you give us these updates, so that because the second part of our discussion will be on looking forward to what we discuss in 2024. What I read was a very interesting case on just transition, with South Africa negotiating, notably with the United States, some very interesting financing on energy transition. And South African municipalities, I think mainly the city of Johannesburg, but I think there was a second municipality, Cape Town, in there that A, played a significant role, and B, got significant financing. And I just thought that model was quite interesting to follow in terms of municipalities trying to provide clean energy to their populations. Please, if you would like to give an update, please just raise your hand, and for your country, we would love. You don't have to be as detailed as Yap just was, but we would love to hear from your country. And I see Charles Hankler, who has his hand up. Please go ahead, Charles. Tell us what country and give us your update.
Hi, I didn't know I'd be first. So this is my first time at this regional working group, and it is a real pleasure to be here. And I am here primarily to listen and learn about what's going on around the continent. A lot of my previous work has been in Asia, so I'm now leading a project in Mozambique, and I want to understand more of what's going on in Mozambique's neighbors. To introduce myself, I'm Charles Hankler. I'm a professor at Georgia State University in Atlanta, and also head of our International Center for Public Policy. It's a center that does decentralization technical assistance around the world. And we have recently received a contract. Well, not that recently. Back in October, we had a start date, received a contract, World Bank funded project in Mozambique, but our counterpart is the Ministry of Economy and Finance in that country. And we are working to make recommendations around every aspect of the vertical fiscal system. So we are looking at all of the classic issues: expenditure assignment at central level, provincial level, municipal level, district level. So expenditure assignment, revenue assignment, vertical transfers, structure of the institution within the Ministry of Finance that oversees transfers. We're recommending making recommendations about the decentralization future roadmap going forward, when different things will happen, and all of that. So it's primarily recommendations that we're making, and we're working with a presidential commission that is also considering this. So we've had kind of a bird's eye view. We've traveled around the country and learned quite a lot. And we have local experts on our team as well. So just to tell you a little bit about what's happening in Mozambique. So as I'm sure all of you know, there are two major parties, Frelimo and Renamo, and Frelimo has been in power since independence in 1975. And Renamo, they fought a civil war, as I know all of you know, up through the 1990s. So in 2015, 16, 17, Renamo was frustrated by being shut out of government and restarted a very low-level civil conflict. This was resolved by a peace agreement and then constitutional reforms in 2018, 2019, in which the core exchange was that Renamo would give up its weapons, but Frelimo would allow elections for the governor position at the provincial level. The basic idea being that Renamo knew that it could probably not win elections at the central level, but it had significant power bases in particular provinces. And so as a result of that, they wanted the ability to hold the governorship positions, which before then had been appointed by the center. And so this deal was implemented. In 2019, there were elections. But one of the problems that occurred is that Frelimo, probably fearing that they might lose control over certain provinces, created an alternate executive called the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State is was basically given many of the powers that the governor had and is centrally appointed. And so now you have this bicephalous structure where you have a governor and a secretary of state, and the legal framework is very ambiguous. We spoke with a number of them, and nobody seems to know, even when they're from the same party, when they're both Frelimo, nobody seems to know who's doing what and what the various powers are. In addition, there was a decision to hold elections at district level. Mozambique has kind of a strange path-dependent sort of structure where you have municipalities right now, there's 64 of them that are elected with elected mayors, and they have a certain amount of autonomy, a weak autonomy, but a certain amount of autonomy. But if you are a Mozambican who does not live in a city, then your immediate government is the district. There are also some lower tier, but your primary immediate local government is the district, headed by a district administrator who is appointed by the center, the Ministry of State Administration. And so you're in a weird situation where if you're an urban dweller, you can vote on your local government, but if you're a rural dweller, you can't. And so there was a decision to elect district administrators. But this was delayed. Basically, the government's backtracked and said, no, we're not going to do it because we don't have the state capacity to do it. It's too complicated and so forth. And so it's been delayed indefinitely. And so,
Charles, I'm going to give you like one more minute to,
yep, I'm
to wrap up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I talked forever. So basically, that's been delayed indefinitely. And so the other issue is that at the district level, where the services are primarily delivered, primary education, primary health, infrastructure services, there is almost no fiscal capacity. There is no ability to raise revenue. The transfers are all for current expenditures, almost all for current expenditures. And there's almost no infrastructure budget. We spoke to district administrators who couldn't even purchase a car to drive around their district. So, and everything is so centralized that district administrators often don't even have the power to hire and fire principals, for example, at local schools. So there's still kind of a ways to go in terms of fiscal decentralization and political decentralization at these tiers. So I'll just wrap it up there and thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing about what's happening around the continent.
Thank you very much, Charles. Fascinating. We could definitely listen on Mozambique. Interestingly enough, if there are any other people online who want to speak about Mozambique, please let me know in the chat, because in our last meeting, we did focus a little bit on the fiscal transfers in Mozambique. So very interesting there, with decentralization being a factor in ending a conflict. So being something that the government sort of gave up to get Renamo to lay down arms. But then creating this bicephal structure, and also kind of a dual citizenship in the sense that if you're urban, you get to vote for who runs the municipality, but if you're rural, you get an appointed district administrator. So sounds like some very key challenges there. Thank you very much. I'm looking in the chat and I see Saeed Jamal and Alice. So Saeed, would you take the floor first, and then Alice will come in after you. Just let us know what country you're updating us on.
Yes, thank you, Walla. Thank you, Professor Charles. I think I'm really glad since that he took stage before me, and he widely brought a lot about Mozambique, particularly about fiscal decentralization and the general context of what's happening in the issue of decentralization here. Of course, I won't be redundant. I won't go again on what Professor Charles has been pointing of, but I would like to stress other aspects that I pointed here. Particularly from the political decentralization and administrative decentralization point. There is a debate going on here in Mozambique based on a commission created called CREMOT. Is an interministerial commission that stands to discuss the roadmap of decentralization in Mozambique. Even though there are a lot of criticism on this commission, since that is a more rather than being more technical, it's a more incorporating political actors instead of bringing more from the civil society to discuss in a civil matter, in a civil perspective, rather than defending a political party interest. So it's a very criticized, particularly from the civil society organization, this group, because it's not representative at all, and neither bring technical issues on board. This is one aspect related to this CREMOT, and we are really looking forward to see the outcomes of these discussions of this point, based on the job that have been done, that have been developed by this commission. And the other aspect that I would like to point, it's related to the national urbanization policy and the implementation strategy that from yesterday and today, even now, the meeting just finished in less than 1 hour. We in Mozambique are discussing about the national urbanization policy that will deal with the management of the land at the all level, from the national level to the district level, passing by provincial and the municipal level. And in this field, there is a lot of partners from UN Habitat, GIZ, this German cooperation agency, and World Bank, and so on and so forth, and also the government represented from the Minister of Public Administration, Minister of Land and Environment, and as well as Minister of Public Work. So the other aspect that I would like, interesting aspect that I would like to point in that perspective is those three ministers who are supposed to be the leading one from the governments. They're really not putting, for my way of thinking, they're not putting a lot of power in this, you know, because it so seems to be related to the partners for those international organizations to deal more with this process. And the other aspect, the last one that I would like to point to, Walla, if you give me time, it's about community participation. I'm leading, before I used to work as a consultant in the World Bank and also as advisor to the mayor of municipality of Maputo, the capital city. And now I'm running an organization called CEDEPA, Center for Participatory Democracy and the Human Rights in Mozambique. We are working with the MASC. MASC is a mechanism of supporting civil society organization. So we implementing with the National Association of the Municipalities in Mozambique, we implementing the so-called Citizen Assembly, Municipal Citizen Assembly. In Maputo area will be a Metropolitan Citizen Assembly. We would like to bring different mechanisms, incorporate different mechanisms of citizen participation in one set, and in another way, another aspect, or another corner, we would like to create local pool of experts, of specialists to help with local municipalities. Mr. Charles, Professor Charles, he was mentioning 64 municipalities, if I'm not wrong, but actually is 65 municipalities, and 12 of those 65 municipalities are really new municipalities. There is no capacity, neither technical, no infrastructures, and different one. So we would like to support in that perspective by creating local pool of specialists in each municipalities that will help the representatives and the elected and also the municipal officials in a specific matter. So this is actually what SEDEPA is doing. And sorry, yeah, and yeah.
Thank you so much. And it was perfect in terms of the timing, still focusing on Mozambique, but giving us a very very complementary perspectives there in terms of what's happening at the policy level, in terms of these discussions on national urbanization policy, also the commission, which seems to be straddling between the political and the policy level. Very interesting initiatives, I think, with regard to citizen participation with your municipal citizen assembly. That interestingly enough is focused not only on participation but also bringing identifying local expertise within the municipality. I think that's very, very interesting work. Thank you so much.
Just to add, sorry, to add one point. Also, we are working in the participatory budgeting process to bring it to the municipality and to increase the local capacity in dealing with this matter. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Said. And I will give the floor to Alice and then to Jacob. Baba, I will give it to you after those two because I know you're going for a regional update. So, Alice, please tell us what is happening in Cameroon. And for all others, some may have joined along the way. We're using this meeting to get a little bit of an update on what is happening across the continent in terms of decentralization. So if you can speak to a specific country or region and you have some key updates on what is happening on that region, in that region, please let us know. We have heard from South Africa, we have heard from Mozambique, from two different participants, and now we are about to hear from Cameroon. Alice, over to you.
Thank you, Kah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am glad to participate in this meeting. My name is Alice Malonte. I am a consultant specializing in leadership and management, and I mostly work on local economic development and also gender mainstreaming. So when we talk about decentralization in Cameroon, it was recognized as an important process since 1996, but the process was really initiated in 2004. And the most recent law that we have on decentralization in Cameroon is the General Code of Decentralized Territorial Collectivities of 2019. So this general code recognized two main DTCs, which are the municipalities and the regions. And the regions are a very recent institution that was put in place in 2020. And on the administrative plan, we can say that there are laws which govern the decentralization process, and those institutions are already put in place. But the main challenges that we have in Cameroon lie at the political level, for example, in terms of transfer of powers from the central government to the decentralized collectivities, and at the financial level, in terms of transfer of resources. And in 2024, this is the most recent updates, we can observe that some progress was made in terms of transferring the the resources. For example, we can observe that there was an increase of the financial envelope for the DTCs. So compared to 2023, we had an increase of 15.8%. But we can also say that there is still a lot of work to be done to ensure that those DTCs are really autonomous and are no longer dependent on the central government, for example, for their resources and for their functioning. And we can also note, I will mention three most important challenges. We have first I talked about the transfer of resources and also the transfer of powers. But also we have a lack of qualified human resources. And we can also note that there is not equity in transferring the resources. For example, there are some areas or municipalities which are more developed than others. And we think that it is really important that those DTCs become autonomous and also have their own functioning, because it will be very important for them to implement the local development that is their mission. Thank you, Kah.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much for that update on Cameroon, a very long decentralization process from 1996. Became effective in 2004, and only in 2019 have we had recent laws on effective fiscal transfers and transfer of powers as well. And still very much of a struggle on the political level to be able to be effective and have really effective autonomous local governments. Jacob, I am going over to you. Zambia is a country that is exciting right now in Africa. Nice democratic strides at the national level. Is that translating to the local level? Jacob?
Well, thank you so much. We just have a challenge of power, load shedding here. Yeah, so we're grappling with that challenge. I hope in South Africa it's getting better now. Yeah. In terms of the Zambian context, thank you so much. In terms of the Zambian context, I think I'll start with the areas where we are doing well. Then I'll end with what I see as the challenges. Yeah. In terms of course, I'm a lecturer at a public university called Mungushi University in the School of Social Sciences. Previously, I used to be head of department up to I think last few months. I used to be head of department for a department called Social Development Studies under the School of Social Sciences. Of course, I have strong interest as well in questions of decentralization, governance, and also these issues of how federalism issues. Yeah. Now, in terms of Zambia, just a quick update on the fiscal decentralization. Lately, we are doing quite well in that area because of the Constituency Development Fund, which has been increased heavily under this current president who came in 2021. It used to be a less amount, but now it's quite a significant figure that goes to every constituency, and it's shared equally to each constituency. Of course, there are debates on whether they should bring formula to that funding and all that. And that fund, it goes through a local government, local authority, but each constituency has that figure, a flat figure for everybody. And the communities on themselves decide how to spend the priorities and all that, with, of course, local and national oversight. So that is, I think, quite a big, because it has made a huge difference. And some of it goes to sponsor skills training in particular. For universities, where we have a separate fund, which is managed nationally, but the skills training, the infrastructure, so local communities are able to do whatever infrastructure they want. So there are portions around that. So I think that's a good achievement. And across the country, I think especially the rural and outskirts, it's heavily appreciated. Yeah, then in terms of the governance system, since independence, of course, the British left the prime minister, the parliamentary democracy type of setup. But after independence, we moved to a highly centralized presidential system. With that, I think we haven't done well in terms of political decentralization. I think that is where the biggest challenge is, because, for example, we have 10 regions, and so we almost run a two-tier system: the national level and the district level. The regions are very weak politically, so they cannot really. It's not like in the South African context where they're able to supervise local authorities and all that. They are more or less an agent. So the political power hasn't been decentralized, I think, from independence to the regions. So they are more like agents. So we have a politically appointed minister, is an appointee of a presidential appointee. Administratively, we have a permanent secretary of the region, but they don't do much, including funding. Even the budget, they don't get much. So I think that is where the challenge. Of course, there is some promise of constitutional reforms, because our system largely relies on the constitution. So I'm not sure if that process is not yet opened up for discussion. The government has been promising. We don't know whether there will be a nationwide consultation or it will be driven by politicians at parliament, because previously sometimes they would amend parts as long as they have the numbers. Yeah, of course they don't have the numbers, so we are waiting. Yeah, so and we hope this issue will feature, because I don't think the country is vast. So I think we need to find a way of really moving on the political decentralization, just like my colleague from Cameroon has mentioned. So I think we have a similar challenge in that area. I think that's the major challenge I see. Yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Jacob, for those updates from Zambia. Also nice to hear somebody who's moving right along in terms of the fiscal decentralization and increasing the budget going to local level. And also sounds like you have some really good community participation in decision-making on those budgets, and how spending occurs at that local level. Quick question before I let you go. What about accountability at the local level? So the budgets are increasing, communities are participating. Are there accountability mechanisms, and are they working?
I think indications so far that they are working, because the priorities are decided by the local communities themselves. So there are all sorts of innovations from the community. They decide on how to spend what they want. So indications are that yes, there is adequate participation, because the needs are identified in the wards, yes, and the constituencies. Yeah, and there is participation. The structures there.
Are there reporting mechanisms so that they're getting the feedback on what they decided and what actually happened in terms of spending?
Yes, in the last 1 year, they have been working on that. So there is a bill, I think that there's a bill that guides the whole fund, the whole CDF, and then their processes. So of course, there's always room for improvement and learning, but the indications, despite the challenges, the indications are that there is reasonable accountability. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jacob. And I want to just check that we don't have any other countries. There's some interesting comments in the chat that we can look at. I will go to Baba then, who is going to give a regional update. And Baba, you actually sent in some slides, so let me share your slides.
Great, thank you, Kah.
Yeah.
I was about to mention the fact that I have a presentation. How can I share my slides?
So there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to talk a little bit about French-speaking West Africa as a whole.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Baba Dodo, and I had the chance, actually, I'm working with Kah, the strategies consulting firm. I'm a senior consultant with an experience in decentralization. And recently, that was, I think, last year, I had the chance to meet Professor Yap in the African School of Decentralization, where I did a presentation on the situation of the supervision of central governments on local governments. And for this meeting, I said to myself, probably I might do a kind of research to see whether we have some updates to share with you. So this is what I'm going to do in this very short presentation. So next slide, please. The situation is the one you see, that you all know, that in French-speaking countries, especially in West Africa and even in Central Africa, we have 3 levels of decentralization. We have the municipalities, which are the lowest level, the departments and the regions, which are the highest level. And the authorities that exercising the supervision are either administrative organization or administrative bodies from the central government and divisions from the ministries. And they have like a dual role. Either they support or they control what the local governments do as institutions delivering services to the population. So this is the kind of framework in which this supervision is carried out. But when we were analyzing the situation, we found out that there are these 5 challenges that local governments are facing within their relationship with the central government. We have, first of all, the lack of political will from central governments to lose the power, actually to transfer the power because they fear the fact that they will lose it. The second one is what have been mentioned by all the speakers before me. It's the lack of critical resources to perform the services towards the population. And with this situation, we have a weak citizen participation, which is a very low control or a very low participation from the community in the dynamic. And the fourth one is the weak coordination between the different levels of the governance. So this is actually what we identified as key challenges. The fifth one being the lack of harmonization and regional integration, especially at level of cross-border municipalities between 2 or several countries. So actually, this was the situation by the time we shared the presentation. And from there till today, we've seen these recent moves. I'm sure all of you know that in West Africa, we have at least 4 countries that are currently in transition. These are Mali, Niger, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. And in these countries where we've seen military coups, we've experienced a kind of backslide of decentralization. So this is the first thing that we can notice when we try to do an update of the situation. The second one is that in Benin, we rather see a kind of push forward with the central governments increasing the budget for the decentralization in order to support the municipalities in their duties towards the population. In Côte d'Ivoire, we've seen a kind of similar action with a project on capacity building on public finance management for the local government's human resources. The idea being for them to be able to manage more and more public funds at their disposal. And in Senegal and Chad, two countries where we've seen an election, a presidential election in Senegal, and another one will be held next month, I think, in Chad. This is in May, I think the 6th of May. There will be a presidential election in Chad. So these two countries are kind of seeing a political change that can affect the way decentralization is either organized in terms of rules and in terms of practices. From what I know is that the current president in Senegal, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, said that in accordance with his Prime Minister, Mr. Sonko, that they would carry out a kind of deep reform of institutions. So there we see there will be a change in terms of decentralization. In Chad, probably there will also be a kind of change. And with this picture, we see that at least in French-speaking countries in West Africa, there is a kind of movement that will probably change the face, change the way the decentralization is currently being applied within the 5, probably 10 years in Africa. So this is what I wanted to share with you, Kah, and colleagues. Thank you.
Great, Baba. Thank you very much for that overview and taking into account very recent developments on the political scene. Very, very nice there. And you spoke of Benin and the positive move there in Benin, and we have Ralph Edu, who is a former Minister of Decentralization and Deputy Mayor of Cotonou, who has his hand up. So I'm definitely giving him the floor to let us know what's happening. Ralph Edu, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank Baba for this great presentation. I just want to mention that the French-speaking system is totally different to the, let's say, Anglophone system in terms of public administration. In the French-speaking countries, even in France, it is a centralized power. And the national government always want to control everything from the top to down. You will see in each country, even in France, there is someone appointed by the central government, which we call prefet, who continue to oversee how each municipality or regional government, how they operate. With that, it weakens the system of the decentralization compared to English-speaking country. With that, we need to understand that more we get involved, citizen, more we give more power to local government, we will have more impact and more improvement in terms of national development. The last thing I would like to mention is more we have people involved, we will also be able to hold accountable all the development practices or development agencies in terms of impact of the action. Because usually at the national level, it's difficult to oversee or to track the concrete action developed by different stakeholders working in development issue, health, school education, security. But at the micro level, municipality level, we can better understand how things is working. So that is the key point I would like to add and see how when we want to approach French-speaking country, in which aspect we can focus and give more power to the local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ralph Edu. I think excellent points. Taking into account the different political transitions, political traditions, and the political history of the countries where we are coming from, to the place of decentralization is very, very important. And definitely, I think getting the citizen participation, getting more and more people involved in local governance is a key way to push forward decentralization, both in the Francophone African countries and in the Anglophone countries. They maybe have a step ahead, but I think there's still a lot of work to do at that level as well. So thank you very much to everybody for those updates. We've had updates from South Africa, from Mozambique, from Cameroon, from Zambia, and now this sort of regional view on Francophone West Africa. So I think all of those points are enabling us to kind of get an idea of where we are. I think also they're bringing up a key point that we have been discussing at the LPSA, which is the question about really the more political aspects. Of course, as people who work on decentralization, there is a lot of technical work to do, and there's a lot of figuring out the different mechanisms and systems and tools that are needed at the local level. But where things seem to be stuck, and all of you have mentioned that today, is really at that political level, really at the level of central governments letting go, not creating shadow institutions that continue to sort of control the municipalities. From South Africa, Yap mentioned some key issues, which are issues, I think, for many other countries. What do you do when you have several political parties present in the municipality? How do they work together? And should politicians even be officials? Is it smart to mix up the political and the technical roles at the decentralization level? So a lot of discussion going on at the level of the continent. And this then leads me to use our remaining time to think about what do we want to focus on, how do we want to go forward. And Ralph's comment was very pertinent in already sort of giving us some ideas on that. And he has also put some ideas in the chat, which you can take a look at. We want to think about what do we want to do for the remainder of our meetings in 2024. And what do we want to work on? How do we want to do that work? We thought to do that, we should do a little reminder, a look back at what we were able to do in 2023. So on the thematic level, our first two meetings in 2023 were really focused on organizing the group and doing some of what we're going to do today, what we're doing today, which is looking at the themes, the key themes that we should discuss. And in 2023, we have covered local economic development. We looked at a general presentation on local economic development, and then a specific presentation on eco markets for municipalities. in October, we looked at Mozambique. We had a focus with a resource person from GIZ. We were looking at devolution and fiscal transfers in October, and we had a focus on Mozambique. And Yap gave a presentation on equitable share for local government in South Africa. In January, we had a more open discussion with everyone on local government in the face of different crises in Africa. So we started getting a little bit more political there. What is the role of government as we face crises of food security, of conflict and fragility, and so on? What roles can local governments play? And also decentralization and democracy. How do local governments either help or hurt democracy, and what can we do in decentralization to reinforce democracy? So that gives you an idea of what some of the topics are that we have covered within the last year. And I would like to open it up in both the chat and for those who would like to raise their hand and speak. I want to have two levels of discussion. The first level is, what are key themes that we should push on in 2024 as a Sub-Saharan Africa working group? And we will brainstorm on that for about 10-15 minutes. And then we will spend another 10 minutes to see, do we just continue with these online meetings? Are there other ways in which we would like to work? The LPSA also has thematic working groups in addition to the regional working groups. Do we need to make stronger connections there? So first themes and then mechanisms. So let me open it up to you. Please just raise your hand if there are key themes that you would like us to focus on, and also do not hesitate to put ideas in the chat. So over to you. I know you are not shy, and I know amongst the co-chairs we have plenty of ideas, but please don't leave it up to us. We want to make sure that what we are discussing is really relevant to the needs that you have. I'm going to just highlight Ralph's point. And Ralph is raising his hand himself. I was going to highlight what you said in the chat, Ralph, but let me let you speak yourself. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to talk about just two things. I don't know if we have many participants or many local government entity as part of our different working group. That would be great to have more of them get involved in our different discussion. If we can focus on that, and I invite some mayor and other people, that will bring more, I think, yeah, discussion. The second point is how we can help or develop a mindset at a local level that help local councillor, that they are there, they represent the voice of the citizen and support local initiative, community organization. And in many forested areas, we are seeing a lot of problems related to the livelihood of local communities, indigenous people. So the local government should be able to care about this kind of topic and support people who the national government sometimes, because of corruption, they just, give green light to some company to destroy the forest or mining sector, and people who are in the region, they are suffering. Local government, they don't take any action. So yeah, that's my 2 points I would like to mention. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ralph. Clearly, in terms of our participation, getting more local government elected officials involved themselves, and we can see about getting them in as speakers, as resource persons, to focus on a particular area or country, and also getting more local government actors from forest municipalities. And I think this goes to a wider discussion that had been had at one point, which was about local government and climate, climate resilience, managing climate change. I think this we've had before, and looking at these issues would be interesting. Do we have any other suggestions from participants? I see. Okay, I think there's a hand up. Yeah. Yep, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kah. Yeah, mine is just it's a minor point, but maybe it's something that we can just sort of infuse our approach with. Is that in my work across the continent, looking at decentralization reforms, they are often, very often, they are triggered by big political events or fractures in society, or the resolution of a conflict, or the assertion by civil society for more devolution. They often come at critical moments, and then there is sort of a rush or a pressure cooker to construct decentralization mechanisms. And very often, it sounds a bit paternalistic and it sounds a bit arrogant, but very often in that process, things get designed that don't always make sense. And for example, I think the example for Mozambique is very clear. The institution of parallel structures alongside elected devolved structures. There are also a lot of questions about the use of constituency development funds, across many of the countries in the sub-Saharan region. And not all countries are as progressive about it as Zambia is. And so we see these patterns across countries that enter decentralization reforms. So, maybe this is a very ambitious notion, but where is LPSA then? Can we play a role in sort of informing those processes at the beginning stages, instead of pointing them out afterwards as difficulties? I know these processes are often very political and difficult to be part of, but yet we are all there, and I think we're a formidable collection of experts and actors, both politically and otherwise. And I think we should put our comparative knowledge to use at the right time when these decisions are made, even if we do it through research and influencing and publication and making a noise, that we because the issue of parallel structures, it's an issue throughout Anglo-Saxon sort of devolution legacies, you know, that we have these district commissioners and centrally appointed institutions that either predate devolution and are kept in place to keep a check on the devolved decision making. And in some countries, they even term them, you know, they are spies of the national government. So we see this across many countries, and yeah, I'm just thinking whether we can play a role in let's say, warning or cautioning at the time when it matters. Thank you, Kah.
Yep, your point is just giving me an idea about also as we function. So we've been doing these information sessions, which are really quite fantastic in helping us all stay informed about what is happening. But like you rightly say, there are dysfunctionalities which we see across the board in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I am wondering, could we envisage, taking up one topic? A great example is these parallel structures. I think they are in Anglophone Africa, they're in Francophone Africa. They are definitely undermining decentralization. And I'm wondering whether we could give ourselves the possibility of doing a deeper dive into something like this, which is a key element, and then, publishing a paper or making some kind of statement as a group, perhaps at a key moment. Baba was mentioning that the Senegalese elections, which got everybody excited on the continent, the president has already said he's going to be making huge reforms in decentralization. So like a white paper to a country like that is, that is envisaging reforms. That your point just triggered that thought. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I can, maybe one quick comment is that we don't know, I don't know, and I don't assume anyone else knows exactly what's happening in every country. We wouldn't be able to. But here we have a body of experts that can alert the network and say, hey, we've got a white paper process happening, or we've got a key conference, or we've got a key decision coming up. Is there a way in which LPSA can be triggered to play a role in that, maybe in the way that you just described?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we definitely retain that as a possibility. There's a question from the chat. We don't have a whole lot of time left. There's a question from the chat about federalism. Where do we place federalism in LPSA's decentralization scheme and debate? Is it incorporated or excluded? I have my ideas on that, but let me open up to the group and see if others have some comments on that. Yes, the question is coming from King Kip Legide. Any comments? Judy, I saw that you are on board as well. Jamie, any of the co-chairs, anybody want to weigh in here?
Yes, I'm in, but on federalism, I might not have much. Maybe I'll contribute on a different component and not this one.
Okay, great. Yes, yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I don't want to talk too much, but just on this one, I can't resist. So I would be a little bit reluctant to bring federalism explicitly into the, let's say, the terms of reference, so to call. So if one wants to call it the terms of reference of LPSA. not because it's not important, not because it's not fascinating and all those things. It's just quite a scary concept because it immediately draws you, whether you want it or not, into all kinds of very heavily politicized and divisive debates. And it's sometimes difficult to avoid accusations of you're being secessionist or you're being divisive, or in South Africa we call it the F word. The federalism is the F word. We avoid it, and we rather talk about, okay, how does the division of powers and functions work? Who does what? Where does the money flow? What are the structures? What is the capacity? And that sort of works for us. You end up talking about the same issues, but you sort of avoid what people often make a very divisive label or a divisive theme called federalism. That's at least from a South African perspective. We have a constitution that by all accounts is actually federal in nature, but we don't call it federal, but we just sort of talk about how it works and where it fails and where it creaks. So I'm a little bit reluctant to put it explicitly in our terms of reference. I think it may alienate some of our constituencies, and we can still debate the same kind of issues without perhaps using that label. But anyway, that's just my view, and I'm really open to any other perspective. Thank you.
I can hear Kah. Is anyone talking?
Oh, we may have lost Kah. I don't see her anymore in the lineup. Maybe she just lost her connection for a moment. Okay, let me briefly step into her shoes and continue the chair. Any other perspectives on the question of federalism? I mean, it's quite a big one, so please let us have your thoughts.
I see Raphael Edu has his hand up.
Yes, please go ahead.
1 minute, just 1 minute. Yeah, as someone from French-speaking country, when we have the federal, the state, and local level, and at each level, people are elected. For us, that is the good system of democracy.
Mm.
In our system, we have at the state level, people usually they are appointed by the central government. So they don't represent really the will of people. So in that perspective, for us, federalism is a good thing if at different level people have the ability to face what is happening in their region, local level, state and federal, and all of them are elected. So I can encourage that, and when we can improve in our French-speaking country would be, instead of having prefect who usually at regional or state level they are appointed, we should be able to elect them too. So we don't have any confusion, overlap of the power system across the different levels of the government. And the notion of the government in French-speaking country is different to what we are seeing in English-speaking country. When we talk about government in French-speaking country, it's only the president and the ministers. In English-speaking system, it's the whole body of the government, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So we need to find a way to get a clear understanding of these differences, nuances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You lost me for a few minutes there. We are also struggling with electricity here today. I gathered from the different points that Yap, on the one hand, felt like this is a very delicate topic that we may not want to get into at this stage. Mr. Edu is pointing out that he feels that it's a way to move us forward democratically and is important for our countries. And I would just suggest, perhaps, as we don't have a lot of time left, in that we put that federalism. It is a hot topic for countries where there is this issue of sometimes separatism and so on. But I think for many of us also feel that, this is definitely the way to go in terms of mechanisms of getting power and resources down to the local level. So my suggestion would be that we note down that point. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Very pertinent and hot issue. And that we take the discussion a little bit further in another meeting as to whether we want to include that or not. For now, LPSA is really focused at that local municipal level. And I think that we have our hands full with that. We are not able to do everything we want to do with that. So perhaps we put that topic down. But maybe a very exciting thing to do in 2024 would be to have one event where we have a debate on federalism, and we also get countries. I see comment in the chat from our Nigerian colleague. Nigeria is a federal state, and it looks like that's one of the things that's working in Nigeria. So maybe we have a special debate session on federalism. That would be a lot of fun. But thank you very much for raising this point. We just have 5 minutes left in our meeting, and not even 5, about 3 minutes left in our meeting. And I would just like to open it up for any other points that people would like to share. So far, just as a reminder, we have been able to come up with a couple of points. We have, in terms of themes, in terms of participation already, the suggestion that we get more local elected officials involved, I think is a great one. And I think the way we could do this is probably in having case studies and inviting local elected officials to present a specific case or a specific element that they are working on. There's also a suggestion that we take a look at forest municipalities and how forest resources are being managed. Also, this is a huge area of corruption in most countries, and how we can actually get those resources to be beneficial for the populations on the ground. And extrapolating from there, we said there's a whole issue about local government and natural resource management, climate resilience that we can look at. Another suggestion for better public financial management reforms for the local level. Review of revenue laws and practices. I think fiscal decentralization, as our updates showed, remains a very, very key issue. And we said looking at decentralization reforms and maybe getting ahead of them, getting ahead and giving some advice For example, on this point of parallel structures. We discussed also that could give us an avenue of a different way to work, do a deep dive in research and in case studies that could enable us to have a white paper or give an advisory element with regard to decentralization reforms ongoing. Let me look in the chat. Yap is asking, should we rally around the AU Charter on decentralization? It's there, but not signed by many countries and perhaps a bit dormant. Should LPSA advocate in favor of the Charter's signing? So there's an instrument, a continental instrument that is looked at. And then finally, we have the issue of federalism, which has been brought up. There's also a comment that even in Zambia, it's considered as sort of contentious, but a very fundamental issue as we talk about decentralized government that would be interesting to dive into. And there again, we said, perhaps we could do that in more of a debate form than our usual meetings where we sort of learn from one another about different approaches and tactics and methods that people are implementing. So a very, very interesting discussion. I think there is a lot. Just to let people know, the co-chairs will take all of this information and we'll do some further work on it and see if we can develop our action plan for 2024. And then again, just for people to have it on their calendars, we have a meeting taking place in May. Jamie, I don't know if you want to say a word on the May meeting.
Why don't you go ahead, Kah? No problem for you too.
Okay, great. So we do have the opportunity to have a hybrid meeting in May. I think we're 20th and 21st. Somebody correct me. I don't have the dates right in front of me. Wonderful. Lima to save the day. May 20th to 22nd, in person in Nairobi. The meeting will, be hybrid. So if you are in Nairobi, if you're in the area, you can join the meeting. If you cannot, you can participate online in the meeting. And we are hoping to be able to have a more in-depth meeting on decentralization, multi-level governance in Africa, look at some of these political issues that are being raised, look at, how citizen participation is really taking place and how we can make great stride forward on that. A very interesting agenda. Click on the link and you will be able to see the agenda and participate. We need very, very significant participation, please. And Yap also in what is coming up is saying, please have on your agendas, on your radar, the African School on Decentralization, which is hosted by two universities, the University of Addis Ababa and the University of Western Cape. In October, it's a certificate course on decentralization, and they will soon be issuing the call for participation. So we are 4 minutes over time. Let me stop there and thank everybody very much for wonderful participation. I think the country updates were really very interesting, really helped to give us an overview of what is happening in the region, and very nice to have both Anglophone Africa and Francophone Africa updates there, and making the points that we have raised in terms of topics to be delved into for 2024 very pertinent based on the situation. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful participation. And we will inform very shortly on our next quarterly meeting. You'll get both emails, but also please go to the LPSA. Thank you, everyone. You lost me for a minute. We have no electricity for 2 days. Please click on the link, go to the site, and we look forward to seeing you at the next events. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks to our excellent chair.
Thank you.
All the best, everyone.
Thank you, Kah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good job.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.